Have you ever woken up, gone to work, finished every task on your list, and still felt like nothing in your life actually moved forward? That's the silent trap most people fall into. Busy, tired, responsible, yet stuck in the same place year after year. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Hard work alone doesn't make you a leader. It doesn't build wealth. It doesn't create change. I say this all the time in my leadership seminars. Leadership doesn't begin with a title. It begins the moment you decide to take responsibility for more than your own little box of duties. Because the real difference between a worker and a leader has nothing to do with the job they hold, it's the way they think. A worker says, "Tell me what to do." A leader asks, "What needs to be done?" And if you want your life to rise, that shift must start today. The difference between a worker and a leader is never just about the job they hold. It's about the mindset they show up with every single day. A worker waits. A leader notices. A worker asks, "What do you want me to do?" A leader asks, "What needs to be done?" And that tiny shift, just a few words, can change the entire trajectory of a life. See, many people spend years doing everything right. They show up on time. They follow every rule. They complete every task. But deep down, they feel stuck, as if all their effort isn't taking them anywhere new. I know that feeling. Early in my career, I believed hard work alone was the key to success. I thought if I worked longer than everyone else, if I checked every box and kept every promise, life would naturally reward me. But then it hit me hard. I wasn't thinking like a leader. I wasn't taking responsibility for the direction of my life. I was working in the system instead of working on the system. I was busy, but not intentional. I was moving, but not progressing. I had activity, but no direction. And that is the trap so many people fall into. They mistake motion for leadership. They confuse effort with evolution. Leadership doesn't begin with a title. It begins with awareness. It begins with clarity. It begins the moment you stop asking, "What do I have to do?" and start asking, "Where am I trying to go?" When that question becomes part of your identity, everything in your life starts to rise with it. The real question a leader asks is never, "How can I finish everything on my list?" The real question is, what truly matters and why does it matter? That's the separation. A worker focuses on efficiency. A leader focuses on effectiveness. A worker polishes the ladder. A leader makes sure the ladder is leaning against the right wall. Because climbing fast means nothing if you're climbing in the wrong direction. When you think like a worker, you depend on instructions. You wait for someone to give you clarity, to tell you the next step, to show you the target. And while you're waiting, life moves without you. But when you think like a leader, you stop waiting and start generating direction. You begin to set the tone. You define priorities. You carry a vision in your mind long before anyone sees it on paper. That's what responsibility really is, not pressure, but purpose. A worker says, "I did my part." A leader asks, "Did what I did move us closer to the mission?" That's a different level of thinking. That's what separates movement from management, impact from activity. Thinking like a leader requires courage. The courage to zoom out, question the obvious, and challenge your own habits. It takes reflection, space, and a willingness to admit when something no longer works. But here's the reward. Once you start thinking this way, you stop being trapped by circumstances. You stop blaming conditions. You stop waiting for opportunity. You begin shaping it. You begin building it. Your life stops being a checklist. It becomes a direction, a mission, a vision you carry with conviction. And that's when leadership truly begins. Most people spend their entire lives chasing goals. Finish this. Hit that target. Check off the next box. But here's the truth leaders eventually learn. Goals create pressure. Growth creates transformation. A worker sees the finish line as the end. A leader sees the finish line as the beginning of the next race. Every challenge carries two rewards. What you get from accomplishing it and who you become through overcoming it. Workers focus on the first. Leaders value the second. I once met a man who hit every sales goal his company ever gave him. Every year, he performed. Every year, he achieved. And every year, he stayed in the same place. He couldn't understand why. But the reason was simple. Goals alone don't promote you. Growth does. You can accomplish everything on your list and still be the same person you were when you started. But when you think like a leader, you no longer ask, did I complete it? You ask, did I grow because of it? Easy goals create effort. Hard goals create evolution. And evolution is what leaders seek. They see failure not as a setback, but as feedback. They reflect instead of retreat. They extract the lesson and reinvest it immediately. When you build your mindset on growth, something powerful happens. Your patience increases. Your consistency deepens. Your thinking becomes more strategic. Your perspective expands. You begin to outgrow your old limitations. And once you outgrow your limitations, opportunities begin to chase you instead of you chasing them. Growth is the compound interest of leadership. Steady, quiet, unstoppable. Real leadership isn't handed to you with a title. Real leadership is earned slowly, quietly, consistently through the example you set. Authority might get people to obey for a day, but influence earns commitment for a lifetime. A worker depends on instruction. Tell me what to do and he'll do it. A leader depends on inspiration. Watch what I do, and you'll want to do it too. That's the difference between power and presence. Power pushes people. Presence pulls them. I've seen managers try to force productivity through pressure. It works for a moment, but people eventually resist. They hold back. They disconnect because pressure demands obedience, not excellence. But when someone leads with discipline, steadiness, and character, others naturally rise to match that standard. Influence is contagious. People can feel integrity. They can sense consistency. They can see the difference between someone who performs and someone who lives by principles. A true leader doesn't have to announce leadership. It shows in how they keep promises, how they handle stress, how they treat people when no one is watching. Workers need oversight. Leaders practice self-governance. And that quiet, internal discipline builds invisible authority, the kind people trust without being asked. Influence grows through service. The more value you bring, the more weight your words carry. People don't always remember what you told them, but they remember how they felt working with you. Leadership isn't about controlling people. It's about contributing to them. It's about lifting the standard first in yourself, then in everyone around you. Because charisma might open the door, but character is what keeps you in the room. Most people try to improve their lives by simply working harder. But leaders know something different. Effort alone creates short-term results. Systems create long-term success. A worker thinks in tasks. Let me finish this. A leader thinks in systems. How can we make sure this gets done right every time? That single shift separates stress from stability, chaos from clarity. When you rely only on effort, your results rise and fall with your energy. But when you build systems, your results become repeatable, consistent, predictable, sustainable. In that, I once told a young man, don't just fix the problem. Fix the process that caused the problem. Because if you only fix the problem, you'll meet it again next week. But if you fix the process, you prevent it from returning. That is how leaders multiply results without multiplying stress. Look at a farmer. He doesn't wake up every morning hoping the soil cooperates. He builds a rhythm, plowing, planting, watering, harvesting, a system, a structure, a predictable path to success. Leadership works the same way. A good system turns excellence into routine. It removes randomness from performance. It frees your mind from constant firefighting so your energy can flow toward progress. And systems don't need to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as a checklist, a daily rhythm, a communication habit, a clear standard everyone follows. Simplicity is strength when it eliminates waste and uncertainty. When you start thinking this way, you stop asking, how can I work harder? And start asking, how can I make it easier to do the right thing every time? That question is the beginning of mastery, because leaders don't chase success, they engineer it. One of the quietest but most powerful differences between workers and leaders is the way they deal with the future. A worker reacts. A leader anticipates. A worker waits until something happens and then responds. A leader looks ahead, prepares, and acts before the moment demands it. Reaction creates stress. Anticipation creates confidence. Most of what we call crisis is simply the result of not thinking far enough ahead. You don't have to predict the future to prepare for it. You just have to understand patterns. Because life repeats itself. Problems have cycles. Opportunities leave signals. Leaders read those signals early. They pay attention to momentum, tone, timing, behavior. They notice what others overlook. They plan while others hesitate. That's why some people seem lucky. They're not lucky, they're ready. Readiness is the foundation of calm. People think leaders stay calm under pressure because they're fearless. But the truth is much simpler. They already rehearsed the moment in their mind. They already made the decision before the pressure arrived. A worker says, I didn't see that coming. A leader says, I planned for that possibility. Anticipation isn't paranoia. It's awareness. It's respect for reality. It's the discipline of thinking one or two steps ahead, instead of being trapped in the urgency of the moment. When you develop this habit, your days stop feeling chaotic. You stop chasing problems. You start shaping outcomes. You start controlling the pace instead of being controlled by it. The worker survives the day. The leader shapes the day. And that shift from reaction to anticipation is one of the greatest upgrades a mind can make. Before anyone can lead others, they must first learn how to lead themselves. And this is where most people struggle. Not because they lack talent, but because they skip the foundation. A worker waits for motivation. A leader creates momentum. A worker relies on deadlines, supervision, and pressure. A leader relies on standards, integrity, and discipline. Self-leadership is the invisible strength behind every visible success. It shows up in the smallest things, your punctuality, your preparation, your follow-through. These habits seem simple, but they form the core of credibility. Because if you cannot manage your own actions, you will never be trusted to manage anything bigger. Leaders don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't wait to be watched. They don't need applause, reminders, or someone checking in. They hold themselves accountable long before anyone else does. A worker says, when I'm in charge, I'll be more disciplined. A leader says, I'll become disciplined now, so I'm ready when the opportunity comes. That is the difference between waiting for position and preparing for responsibility. Your morning routine, your priorities, your habits, they all reveal your readiness for more. Every promise you keep to yourself builds inner strength. Every excuse you accept weakens it. And here's the truth. People don't follow confusion, they follow conviction. Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Leadership isn't about being above anyone. It's about being ahead, in discipline, in composure, in character. If you want to rise from worker to leader, start by leading the hardest person you will ever manage, yourself. That is where leadership truly begins. There comes a moment when every serious person faces a quiet but life-changing choice. Will I keep thinking like a worker, or will I begin thinking like a leader? This moment rarely arrives with fireworks. Often, it comes in the middle of an ordinary day, when you suddenly realize that doing more is not the same as becoming more. The worker's life is measured by motion. The leader's life is measured by direction. The worker says, I'm busy. The leader says, I'm building. One fills time, the other fulfills purpose. Leadership isn't about escaping labor. It's about elevating it. It's about taking the same work and turning it into something meaningful. It's about trading repetition for refinement, effort for impact, reaction for responsibility. A worker asks, "How can I get this done?" A leader asks, "How can this be done better, smarter, faster, stronger, or by someone better suited than me?" That's not laziness. That's leverage. When your thinking shifts, your results multiply. You stop measuring progress by hours and start measuring it by outcomes. You stop chasing approval and start building results. You stop waiting for circumstances to change and begin designing the conditions you need. This is the transformation, from dependence to direction, from responding to life to shaping life. And no, this shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes reflection, humility, practice. You will still have days when you slip back into worker mode, but the more you train your mind toward vision, growth, influence, and discipline, the more your leadership instinct takes over. Eventually, everything changes. You stop asking, "What do I get?" and start asking, "What do I become?" Because leaders are not born, they are built. Built by thought, built by choice, built by habit, built by trading motion for meaning and reaction for responsibility. And when your thinking rises, everything else in your life rises with it. At some point, you must look at your life with absolute honesty and ask yourself, how many years have I been busy, yet still in the same place? Because staying stuck is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of new thinking. Your future will not change until your mindset changes first. You have worked hard. You have completed enough tasks. But this is the moment to rise above the checklist and step into the role your life has been waiting for. The role of a leader of your own direction. No more waiting. No more reacting. No more letting circumstances decide who you become. If you are ready to shift from motion to meaning, from effort to impact, from limitation to leadership, comment the number 8 below. It is not a random number. It is a declaration, a symbol of prosperity, new beginnings, and the life you choose to build next. Your transformation starts now with 8.